de l'environnement, de la protection de la nature et du développement durable, Madame la représentante du coordonnateur résident du système des Nations Unies, Monsieur le représentant du programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement, Messieurs les représentants de l'ambassade du Japon, Messieurs et Mesdames les coordonnateurs des programmes et projets, distingués et invités en vos qualités et grades, l'Atelier national sur les données empiriques de l'action cohérente et balai, Ecosystem Based Adaptation, LED, Low Emission Development et de l'action climatique pour la Action for Equitable, Integrated and Sustainable Development, président national EBAFOSA. Le message de la représentante du coordonnateur exécutif du système des Nations Unies. Enfin, nous aurons deux interventions. Le message du représentant du programme des Nations Unies et le discours de Monsieur l'inspecteur général du ministère de l'Environnement, de la protection de la nature et du développement durable. Après cette phase, nous aurons la photo de famille qui se fera à l'intérieur de la salle, les échanges avec la presse qui se feront à l'extérieur et la pause café. Tout de suite, la projection du documentaire. Je vous remercie.
Monsieur l'inspecteur général, Madame la représentante du coordinateur du système des Nations Unies au Cameroun, Monsieur le représentant du UNEP, Excellences, Messieurs les représentants des ambassadeurs, chers représentants des organisations internationales, chers partenaires techniques, chers représentants des organisations de la société civile, des coopératives, des cantines, l'occasion m'est donnée de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à cette rencontre
qui est en fait la présentation des résultats, je veux dire, concernant les données, n'est-ce pas, d'activité sur le terrain que nous menons. Nous a amené penser à cette rencontre avec l'UNEP, c'est de dire que nous avons besoin des données pour tout ce qui regarde les aspects liés au changement climatique. Et ces données, on peut les récolter directement à partir du terrain. Mais pour les récolter, certainement, il y a toute une méthodologie qu'il faut suivre et je pense qu'il y a tout un cadre aussi qu'on devrait mettre en place pour permettre que cela se réalise avec tous ceux qui interviennent dans le cadre des changements climatiques au Cameroun. C'est pour ça que nous sommes heureux de vous accueillir aujourd'hui. Et je vais pas être long, simplement pour dire que nous souhaitons vraiment que les participants qui soient là comprennent que nous sommes ici vraiment pour des échanges. Nous n'avons pas la science infuse, mais nous savons qu'ensemble, nous pouvons faire beaucoup. C'est vraiment dans l'esprit de développer une synergie d'action que nous avons bien voulu vous inviter à être avec nous, à être avec les UNEP. Merci, je vous remercie.
Merci, monsieur le secrétaire général. Tout de suite, le message de madame la représentante du coordonnateur.
Pour une meilleure cohérence intersectorielle et politique climatique en matière de sécurité alimentaire, d'économie verte et de développement durable inclusif du Cameroun. Vive le partenariat public-privé société civile, vive la coopération internationale. Je vous remercie.
Au terme du discours de monsieur l'inspecteur général du ministère de l'Environnement, de la Protection de la Nature et du Développement durable, nous allons suivre notre phase protocolaire avec la photo de famille qui se fera plutôt à l'extérieur, suivi des échanges avec la presse, dont nous prions tous les participants de regagner l'extérieur sous la conduite du protocole pour la photo de famille.
C'est normal d'être ici pour soutenir cet événement et apporter mon expertise dans ce domaine. Nous travaillons aussi avec l'UNEP qui a aujourd'hui signé un partenariat avec ADIED français, partenaire spécial de l'Agence spatiale européenne pour l'observation de la Terre et l'imagerie terrestre.
The second aspect is that chemical fertilizers are actually imported. That means that they depreciate foreign reserves of the country and at the same time also put a burden on farmers because they need money to buy it. Whereas organic fertilizer can be made from simple waste, from droppings of animals, from dropping of chicken, which means that even a mother in a village can actually be able to use those droppings to actually enrich the health of her soil, of her farm. And in that way, she's going to have bumper harvest and she can be able to use that land for quite a very long time without necessarily having to depend on what she might not afford, like chemical fertilizer. And I think the third part that is quite very, very important is that we cannot be able to address the youth challenges, unemployment challenges in the country without thinking of how do we turn environmental challenges into opportunities. And one of the biggest opportunities is turning waste, organic waste, and this is very important. There are examples across Africa in Kenya where young people are actually using waste to make fertilizer and they are making billions of dollars. That then means that instead of depending on what we don't produce as a country, we can start to look at how do we turn agricultural waste into fertilizer, organic waste into fertilizer that will create jobs but will help farmers in communities access this fertilizer that can make the soil better, ensure increased production, but at the same time contribute to employment creation for the country.
magasin de Marois d'Étienne. J'ai reçu 300 moutons à mon magasin. On peut la tontine vers des magasins. On produit, on a le mouton et le lait.
Parce que ça contribue, n'est-ce pas, à apporter les richesses. Et puis, toutes ces belles femmes que nous avons dans la salle, est-ce qu'elles savent que l'huile de balanites, c'est un trésor? Voilà, on peut circuler. Hein, c'est un grand trésor. Alors, dites-nous, Gaëlle, qu'est-ce que vous faites et pourquoi? Et quels sont les résultats?
Merci beaucoup. Bonsoir à tous. Moi, c'est Normo Tazenkou Gaëlle. Je fais partie du groupe des jeunes producteurs de charbon écologique de Keynote. Ok. Qu'est-ce qui nous pousse à décider de faire dans le charbon écologique? Nous sommes dans la zone sahélienne. Il fait chaud. Tandis que certaines ONG se battent dans le reboisement, la population s'attelle à détruire les arbres. Il faut bien qu'ils ne pas, il faut bien qu'ils fassent à manger. Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour les empêcher de détruire ces arbres? Il faut réfléchir à une autre source de combustion qui fera en sorte que nous devons faire à base de quoi pour pouvoir réunir toutes ces conditions. Dans les petites recherches, on s'est rendu compte qu'on pouvait faire du charbon à base de déchets agricoles. Les déchets agricoles sont tellement versés un peu de partout dans le nord, surtout les déchets de coque d'arachide, parce que les autres déchets sont utilisés pour d'autres ressources, c'est-à-dire le sel gel, la langue, comme on le dit dans le Grand Nord. Ok, on s'est concentré donc dans les déchets de coque d'arachide. Elles sont déversées un peu de partout. Non seulement elles ne sont pas valorisées, mais elles salissent même notre commune, notre ville. On a commencé à collecter. On a utilisé notre carbonisateur qui nous permet de les brûler tout en enlevant tous les mauvais gaz. Quand on a fini de carboniser, on utilise un liant qui facilite le compactage. Et quand le produit est sorti, on le sèche. Ok. Quand on a
because it is an important factor before she consumes. Food is primarily derived from agriculture.
Ok, d'accord, nous sommes tous ici dans l'aliment pour passer par.
But what I want to highlight here is the biggest employer in most African countries, and Cameroon is among those countries. It's the backbone of most African economies. It's the backbone of ours. And it's the main driver for sectoral development. Think about it for a moment. When we're trying to build roads, to link markets and farms. We're trying to create energy sources. We're trying to build energy sources to help transform agricultural produce. So agriculture is actually the main pivotal sector in our economy. So it has the ICT for agriculture, transport for agriculture, energy for agriculture. But there's some bad news. Our food is secure, and this is because agriculture heavily relies on climate. And climate is changing. Climate change is real. At a global level, it's about temperatures rising. It's about hot heat waves and all. But at the local scale, which most of our produce is made in the northern regions of Cameroon, it's fewer rainfalls. Like just a week ago, they started planting maize two months before, and it's unfrequent drought. It's frequent seasonal instability, and things are really going wrong.
Okay, Monsieur Lino, votre aliment est en insécurité.
At the financial level, at the economic level, unemployment rate that increases, use of bad practices to kind of cope with climate that's changing, putting more fertilizer and all, and that value costs high.
Alors, face à ça, nous pensons que.
It's a game of hope. And what's the game of hope? Because this matter was really serious, in 2015 at the COP21 Paris, it 196 countries drafted an agreement that stipulated that they were supposed to cooperate in order to reduce their carbon footprint. Cameroon ratified this agreement that by 2035, considering its 2010 baseline situation, it was 2035 estimated emissions by 2%. And this is a big number, because I think this is the real deal with how we can try to help Cameroon achieve its NDC goal. But here's the fun fact: Cameroon is mostly made up of youth, and that's 75% of our population. And if we need to reduce our emissions by 2%, what does it mean for youth? How can we, this is actually the problem, how can we strengthen the action of youth in the implementation of climate policies in Cameroon? What actual roles can these youth actually play that can be game changers for Cameroon? I think this is the key factor. These are the key factors. Because, yeah, we want to reduce by 2%, but we are most made up of youth.
Okay, Monsieur Lino.
We youth are, we're ready to volunteer. We have the energy, we have the passion, we have the ideas, we have the ambition. And innovative culture is not about being available, being innovative, being passionate. But it comes down to those things at the end of the day.
Okay.
If we want to talk about innovative volunteerism, we can volunteer in 2 ways. The first way is by being entrepreneurs, trying to solve climatic issues, but with solutions that are economically viable. The second way is being ambassadors. Ambassadors, those that lend their voices to yield to reap. And just to talk about champions for a moment, champions are, they are kind of entrepreneurs. They are those that are on the field that try to change what is done, the status quo, the business as usual. The activities can range from biofertilizers to electricity to waste management, recycling, etc. So long as they are trying to have a business that's linked to the environment. On the other hand, ambassadors, they are the voice and climate bureau of champions. So they are the representatives, they are the marketers. Their lead roles in lobbying and advocacy. And this is very important. The ones that try to drive policy changes and create opportunities for champions. And these are at local level by raising awareness in schools, in universities, in communities. It can be at the national level with the parliamentarians, with the government authorities that are competent. It can be at the international level with negotiations and advocacy with the competent NGOs and organizations that are related to them. So, really, we need to guide. We need a platform then that is going to help influence climate. That's going to be capable of influencing climate policies and the practice of inclusive climate entrepreneurship and bringing together ambassadors and champions. And in order to do this, there are 4 aspects. The first key aspect is the training and building the capacity of champions in entrepreneurship, in technologies on the agro-value chain. The second thing is developing the capacities of champions to use web services and ICT solutions in order to drive more of the sales and the entrepreneurship. Is to equip ambassadors with climate technology monitoring tools. It's finally to train ambassadors to practice and influence marketing, lobbying, and advocacy and negotiation techniques with professionalism, because that's what they're supposed to do. At the end of the day, after this is secure, and that's all thanks to climate change. Things can change, and Cameroon government is committed to change. In order to help the country to fulfill its commitment and achieve its NDC goals, youth are a pivotal to this change. Either as champions or ambassadors. To save the food, we as a whole need a platform of young climate ambassadors as entrepreneurs and champions capable of influencing climate policies and the practice of inclusive climate entrepreneurship. Because the name is, we only have one planet. And that from someone famous. We only have one planet. And there is no better time, no better moment to do. So, thank you.
Ok,
Il est à la disposition de tout et chacun une information éducative, préventive et des valeurs éthiques.
The criteria that was said, you have to be a youth between the age of 18 to 35, and you need to have the skill to look into the environment. Our environment is degrading, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to create business for a green business. So look at the challenges in the environment and be able to transform them into an economically viable project, which you can call Islamic entrepreneurship. The youth, they have to be passionate. They need to be innovative, voluntary, as the video presented here, then have a project. To be a champion, you must have a project. If you don't have a project on the ground, then you are not qualified to become a champion. And then you must also have the spirit of being available, of being responsible, and then to be an ambassador at the same time, you must have the negotiating skills. You need to have a champion for you to become an ambassador. So those are the criteria that we put in place so that we'll be able to bring in the ambassadors and the champion that will work together with the policy in place that is be like the voice of the youth in the implementation of the climate policy in Cameroon. So one project has been put in place which will be launched in July, and the main idea of that green project, we have been talking about in Jangui Green this morning. So that one will be in Jangui Youth Green Digital Invest. So this aspect of the youth now coming in. So the project will be launched this July, and the main idea is to collect 110 project ideas to be selected. So many people will come in, then will select 110 ideas from which we'll see how we can go ahead, and with the partners present here, will actually need their financial support so that this action that we want to put in place will actually be realized. And then there's also a time frame upon which we have to operate. Although the work seems to be provisional at this level, but there is a provisional bureau that was set up yesterday, which has the objective of mobilizing more youths so that they will submit in the application to become youth champion or ambassadors. And then the objective is to have about 50 champions and 50 ambassadors. We now need to bring them up so that they will be officially known as the champions and the ambassadors that will carry out the voice of the youth in climate change. And lastly, we shall equally need financial support for this workshop to actually in August. So we are counting on our partners present here today that will actually take it at heart to ensure that the climate champions and ambassadors will actually have the
funds to inform them on what is happening on the ground like you see today, so that they can take up some of those excellent ideas and solutions that are coming and fit into their different processes within their different ministries. There's Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Planning, and Ministry of Youth, Women, and all of that. So that at least the different policies that exist, if they are there to be revised, some of these new ideas can come in. I think on that is very, very crucial for the country, because you cannot be able to make any decision without having data, information on weather, information on different climatic aspects. And I actually see this task force here, well, we will use a different name, but task force is good, but I think we need to differentiate between the task force and the task force that is contributing technical information to already existing processes within the country. So I actually see ONAP a big beneficiary of what comes out of here, because they need the data, which sometimes there are no people, maybe there is data out there, but the availability of that data is difficult. So what is coming out of here, and in this full regularly, the ideas come out of here, the data coming relative from ThinkVet, jobs for young people can now then fit into that, and it will help to ensure that at least ONA is leveraging on that to make information for decision making, whether information in the country. So I see the synergy and working with ONA really, and all the institutions, I would say all the institutions should then be picking up this. So this is a great opportunity for Cameroon, and others should be able to join the task force to contribute ideas, to contribute data, so that it's owned by everybody. EBAFOSA, the Ministry of Environment, chairs this, facilitates it, but what comes out of here goes beyond the Ministry of Environment. It can fit into energy. They're talking about solar energy, fit into Ministry of Finance. They're talking about the green villages here and the cooperatives, ThinkVet, Jangui. So this is really good. So great idea. I just thought I should emphasize that, because I know that sometimes when they say task force, it sounds like it needs something that needs to be created by a degree, but here is that it's a technical working group that produces information and data that fits into different processes within the country, and those institutions, especially the existing institutions, and anybody should be able to contribute to it. That way we will then have one place we can pick data from different dimensions, and that will be good for the country.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour cette préoccupation.
On va créer dans certains jeunes, ils ont dit tout à l'heure, ils créent environ 300 tonnes de charbon écologique avec 50 emplois verts créés et qui contribuent à l'augmentation de 35% des revenus des ménages dans ces localités-là. Alors comment est-ce que partager ces informations, comment les aider à garantir leur marché, à augmenter leur revenus. Alors nous ici, nous les experts ici présents, de toutes les administrations, secteur privé, société civile, ONG, prenons l'engagement dans nos actions quotidiennes, alors dans nos politiques internes, insérer la vision pour leur idée, la question de changement climatique. Parce que nous, pour le rappeler, il y a 5 jours encore, à quelques jours, 5 juin notamment, le Cameroun s'est joint à la communauté internationale pour célébrer la 50e édition de la journée mondiale de l'environnement, qui nous rappelle qu'elle est pour thème un milieu de vie pour les populations à venir, un milieu de vie acceptable. Alors nous avons été réunis ici sur le toit, nous avons écouté ce qui a été dit, une présentation riche. Alors le ministère ici présent, le ministère de l'économie qui est sur le plan national de l'interface avec les organisations internationales sur le plan de la coopération internationale et qui répond au plan national, qui répond des ODD. Ces actions, on l'a vu tout à l'heure, ce pas les actions qui sont contribuées, ce pas atteindre quelques objectifs, notamment sur le ministère de l'Environnement qui est comptable pour le gouvernement en ce qui concerne les changements climatiques, on le sait, et d'autres secteurs d'activité, notamment le ministère de l'Agriculture qui est en charge de la politique gouvernementale en termes d'agriculture. Alors, nous ici réunis en ce jour, voulons, n'est-ce pas, attirer l'attention de nos différentes hiérarchies afin d'intégrer ces notions dans les différentes politiques ou stratégies à venir. Le ministère de l'Environnement est en phase, nous pouvons démarrer la révision du plan national d'adaptation au changement climatique que nous concerne tous. Alors individuellement et collectivement, ils sont interpellés à y contribuer pour atteindre, n'est-ce pas, ces objectifs et nos engagements pris dans le cadre de Paris. Nous avons pensé à faire venir ici les représentants des programmes projets de l'attention des jeunes et des femmes, n'est-ce pas, qui œuvrent dans le secteur agricole. Je pense faire un clin d'œil à nos amis du PAG, n'est-ce pas, qui ont mis sur ce qui s'appelle le PAG, le réseau des jeunes, n'est-ce pas, qui à leur niveau, tout ce que le PAG fait dans un développement, essaie de mettre ensemble les jeunes pour échanger sur la disponibilité. Ça peut être des semences, ça peut être des engrais, ça peut être toute ressource. Alors ce réseau a été créé continuer à renforcer l'esprit de collaboration entre l'EBAFOSA ici présent, le et du PNE, ainsi que d'autres des différents dossiers politiques et
excellent work that has been done here today in this workshop of sharing data to drive inclusive sustainable development, inclusive circular economy, and also to help use this data to implement the NDCs, the National Development Contributions of Cameroon. I think what has been done here today is something that is very, very unique, not only for Cameroon but for Africa, that we can be able to bring different actors, state and non-state actors, to discuss a common problem and solutions that can help create jobs for our youth, address issues facing our mothers, brothers and sisters in communities, but drive the development of the country forward. So I just want to reassure the support of the UN environment through the framework of EBAFOSA, that we will continue to work with the ministries, the environment, of agriculture and all the non-state actors to ensure that we nurture these task force so that at least it becomes the spot where data and information is shared and opted to drive the implementation of the NDCs of Cameroon to ensure that no one is left behind. So I just wanted to thank you. I've listened and I've enjoyed the discussions and I've also learned. And so the idea that have come out of here, the future is going to be about carbon. Carbon for development, carbon for jobs creation, and this data that is going to be coming out of here will really be very, very instrumental. Please clap for yourself. Applaudissez. Je vous remercie.
Merci, c'est nous qui vous engagez à collaborer avec mesdames et messieurs, encore grave mention. Nous parvenons ainsi donc à la fin de cet atelier qui porte sur l'économie verte circulaire, le développement durable inclusif, l'approche EBA-LED et les changements climatiques au Cameroun. Comme disait le secrétaire exécutif de ADI, les invitations qui sont parties du ministère de l'Environnement, nous n'avons pas cru avoir ce nombre-là. Parce que quand j'entrais dans la salle, je trouvais que la salle était vraiment pleine. Et ce qui justifie également l'arrivée tardive de l'inspecteur général quand il est arrivé ici. Parce que souvent, quand il y a une invitation, les gens prennent que le pas. Et vous avez peut-être sur 50 personnes invitées, comme il le dit, peut-être 8 personnes qui arrivent. C'était le temps de laisser le temps pour que les participants arrivent. Mais quand on est arrivé, la salle était pleine. Là, ça montre donc l'engouement que vous avez pour cet atelier qui parle donc du changement climatique, du développement durable, et ainsi de suite. Bref, ce qui concerne donc la protection de notre environnement. Tout à l'heure ici, moi j'ai été impressionné de voir ce qui se fait déjà dans nos villages à travers les tontines vertes. J'ai vu des sachets d'oignons, de mangue, des charbons, des huiles, etc. Voir le miel qui est encore posé là. Donc, moi je suis très content qu'il y a ce genre d'initiative sur le terrain. Et c'est l'occasion pour moi ici de féliciter ADIED qui a pu regrouper ou bien faire appeler toutes ces associations-là à travers Continue Vert pour qu'elles se retrouvent ici à cet atelier qui nous permet de découvrir et de savoir qu'il y a des choses, des initiatives, de très bonnes initiatives d'ailleurs qui sont réalisées au niveau de nos villages. Donc, à toutes ces associations-là, j'ai dit d'aller de l'avant parce que l'atelier s'y a permis de connaître déjà quelques-unes de ces associations. Et si jamais on a besoin d'un produit ou bien d'un accompagnement, je crois que la Continue Verte est là et ça nous rassure. À tous les participants, je vous dis également merci pour votre participation très active à cet atelier. Je crois que quand je vais rentrer, quand je vais donc rendre compte au ministre, je le dirai avec joie d'ailleurs que l'atelier a été vraiment à un niveau pas que j'attendais et il saura comment l'apprécier. Il saurait être long parce qu'on a autre chose à faire, parce que étant ici, il y a ceux qui vont aller dans les bureaux, il y a ceux qui viennent des régions et qui ont des choses à faire à Yaoundé, c'est la capitale. Parce que quand on vient à Yaoundé, il y a beaucoup d'autres choses qu'on peut faire parallèlement. Donc je ne vais pas retenir les gens encore longtemps ici. Je voudrais donc au nom du ministre de l'Environnement, de la protection de la nature et du développement durable, vous souhaiter chacun ici présent un bon retour dans vos localités respectives. Au nom de Dieu, je déclare clos dans l'atelier national sur l'économie verte, le développement durable et inclusif et les changements climatiques. Je vous remercie.
What's the preoccupation of the office at this moment, and how this workshop relates to the goals?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The reality of climate change is seen every day. We are seeing droughts, we are seeing floods, we are seeing crop failure. So actually, all countries are suffering from this, and Cameroon is suffering from this. But what is actually happening is that the United Nations Environment Program produced actually what is called the Mission Gap Report and Adaptation Gap Report, which actually showcases that we are heading in a direction that is actually going to see more women of the planet, and more women will mean that we'll have more drought, we'll have more floods, we'll have more crop failure. And the assessment showcasing specifically Cameroon shows that Cameroon in the long term is actually going to lose its GDP by up to 50%, and in the short term, this will be lost by up to 20%. That is serious, because the economy of Cameroon is dependent on agriculture. And this contributes over 32% of the GDP. It's also the biggest employer of the entire country, with over 60% of people actually employed in this sector. It then means that when we have crop production, we're going to have reduction in the gross domestic product, and we're going to have more suffering. It therefore means to start looking at actions that can address climate change, help people put more money in more pockets, help people put food on the table, and at the same time create jobs for the youth, because we are talking at a time where over 70% of the population of Cameroon is youthful, and most of these youth are unemployed. how can we be able to use climate change, which is a challenge, but make it an opportunity for employment is actually the preoccupation of the United Nations Development Program and the UN Development System in Cameroon. And so this workshop is very, very timely for Cameroon, because what Cameroon has done is across the entire African continent revised its climate action plans, what is called the nationally determined contributions, to be achieved in about 8 years from today by 32%. That's ambitious and they need to be applauded. But how will that be achieved is what this workshop is actually going to do, to showcase that on the ground there is work that is happening, there are opportunities that are creating green jobs for the young people, there are solutions that are helping mothers reduce post-harvest losses, and they are actually putting more money in more pockets. But the data that is coming out of this is going to be utilized to help inform policy recalibration, put incentives so that the country can put incentives, the government can put incentives in place to ensure that what the young people are doing can be brought to scale and make the norm and not the exception.
Thank you very much, the Inspector General at the Ministry of Environment, Nature Protection and Sustainable Development, the representative and the coordinator of the United Nations, resident coordinator in Cameroon, Sophie. Great to have you here. All sister UN agencies, all government representatives, representatives of embassies, everybody present here today, all protocols observed. Bonjour tout le monde. Imagine being in a big feast. You've gone to a celebration and you arrive there just a few hours before lunchtime. It would be a tradition, the sweet aroma of diverse food that you will be missing because you are arriving when people have already started to eat. To make matters worse, just imagine plates of food being passed around and you are excluded from that. Why I'm bringing up this analogy here today is that it underscores the predicament of the entire African continent in the context of global realities. Cette analogie souligne la situation difficile de l'Afrique dans le contexte de réalité mondiale actuelle. For over 2 years, the entire world and Africa and Cameroon have been locked down under the COVID-19 pandemic. And the realities of this is that many people today are going to bed hungry. Many people today are out of jobs. And these realities are what we're going to live with under the changing climate. But right here in Cameroon, as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, Cameroon suffered inflation topping 4.2, driven by a 9.7% increase in food prices. This is not just an issue for Cameroon, it's an issue for Africa, it's an issue for the entire world. And this has costed jobs. But I was speaking today, there is the elephant in the room called climate change, which is projected to reduce the GDP of Cameroon by 50% in the long run, and 10% in less than 10 years from today if nothing is done. But at the end of the day, what is quite very, very important, as Sophie has indicated, is that the United Nations Development Initiative in the country, the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework implementation in Cameroon actually supports the country to be able to address these issues, specifically strategic priority 4, which focuses on ensuring environmental sustainability and management of climate risk and disasters. But what I've come here today to do is 4 things. The first is that Cameroon must be applauded for the excellent policies that are put in place. We're speaking here, Cameroon have got the revised nationally determined contributions, which is actually one of the ambitious in the entire African continent. And we must be able to appreciate that progress that the country has already taken. Cameroon have the root unemployment strategy as the engine sector for economic growth towards the actualization of the Vision 2035. And these aspects need to be applauded. The second aspect is that in Cameroon, the informal sector, Cameroon is the only country in the entire African continent where 50% of the GDP is contributed by the informal sector. And this is an acknowledgement that we must be able to leverage on to be able to put in place the building blocks. It is quite very, very exciting that the work done by ADIED, working with the Ministry of Environment, working with the Ministry of Agriculture, and partners through the United Nations Environment Program Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Food Security Assembly, EBAFOSA initiative, that we are seeing that the engagement of the informal sector is actually tapping climate action opportunities and creating opportunities for young people, and for our mothers, for our brothers and sisters in communities across the entire country. And this is generating data, this is generating information to be prioritized in expanding the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. But we need to move from talk to action, because that is the essence of the Sustainable Development Goal, ensuring that no one is left behind. And to do this, we must be able to look at what is happening within the country. Over 70% of Cameroonian households depend on wood and wood fuel. This is costing the country not only in terms of GDP, because we're expending a lot on charcoal, but $300 million each and every year. We're also losing lives, up to about 7,000 Cameroonian lives lost as a result of depending on charcoal. In agriculture, whose harvest losses are costing the country a lot of money, up to 50% of what is produced is actually being lost. And this, if you take just the example of the tomato value chain, Cameroon is losing $200 million each and every year because of lack of value addition. And this is costing jobs, over 1.5 million jobs annually, which could actually be utilized to create jobs for the youth. Then leveraging on nature-based solutions that with forestry techniques have actually shown that actually the country can be able to unlock opportunities and actually add more jobs to young people. But we need to do something that can be able to tap these opportunities that have been lost. The first is to leverage communal cooperatives. Through the work that ADIED with the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Environment are doing, they're showing that actually both in Adamawa region to the far north and the eastern region down to the central region, up to 8 ton things have already been engaged, and they are going to present on some of these aspects today, and the data coming out of these will help reform and actually inform policy. The second aspect is that we cannot, in a country that have over 75% of the population youthful, not put youth at the center of driving transformational development. It is therefore that data be used to inform how actions that you can be able to benefit, where jobs can be created, gets done, and therefore skills retooling needs to be very, very important, because that's the first step of engaging the informal sector and also ensuring that youth can actually be engaged. And through this work, over 1,000 young people and community members have been trained. And that takes me to the third point, which is to tap on local governance structure. What we're seeing across Cameroon is that through this work, local governance structures in each region, the local leaders in municipalities, are engaged to enhance ownership. Honorable representative of the minister, the uptake of these lessons from what we are seeing is that this is going to ensure that we can be able to empirically drive climate action solutions, create jobs for the youth, and ensure that no one is left behind. Ensemble, nous pouvons faire une différence positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief of United Nations Environment Program. Nous vous prions, chers participants, de prêter